Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Gemcutting Conversations. My name is Justin K. Prim, and I'm going to be your host for this Sunday. I am very, very excited about this episode. We have with us today a very good friend, a very good cutter, and my mentor from around the world, Ken Harrington. So let me just say a few words before I bring him in and let him tell his story. I met Ken last year. I think it was last year. I was in London doing some research for an article that I was working on about the history of gem cutting in London. And I thought that I had met really all of the old school cutters, the two that are there. And by total random chance, I saw this ad for a machine on a website that I hadn't come across. I think I had been in London already for a month on this research project, and I saw the phone number and I just called him up. I had no idea who this was or what was going on. And Ken answers the phone, and he was just from the first moment that we spoke, he was a total joy, a really open, kind human being that invited me over. I came, I think, just a couple days later, and came out to his studio, and he showed me around, introduced me to his crew, and we've been friends ever since. We've been visiting or calling and chatting and texting and sending each other videos, and it's been an amazing experience. So Ken apprenticed in the 1960s in London, which we're gonna talk about a lot. So I won't say too much about that. But so he's definitely been around the industry for a long time. He knows a lot, and when it comes to gem cutting, he knows maybe more than almost anyone else that I've ever met, including some things that nobody else I've ever met knows. So I'm really excited to see where the conversation goes tonight, and just in general to see where our future goes together, because we've got some projects planned and some interesting things that should have been for this year, but with COVID and everything's been sort of pushed back. But yeah, we got some interesting things in the works, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So I guess it's my pleasure now to bring in Ken. So Ken, if you are ready, you can come on in and unmute, bring in your video, and we'll get started.
How's that?
Hello,
Hi,
welcome.
welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. How's it going? So you're in Ipswich right now.
Yes.
And so for all of our friends and guests who are here with us, where is Ipswich? Because I didn't know before I came and visited you.
Where's Ipswich? East Anglia,
Okay.
about 100 or so miles from London, or 70 miles from London.
Okay. Yes. So you're almost straight east, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so how's things going now? I haven't really spoke to very many people in the UK since COVID started. What's been happening with the trade from your guys' point of view?
From London, it was virtually closed down.
Okay.
There was nothing open at all. But we've we're fortunate. We've got work.
Okay. Let me don't need that anymore. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I briefly mentioned, that you started in the 60s, but maybe you should just give us the story a little bit. How did you, well, first of all, who are you briefly, but then we'll get into the story of how did you become this person that you are today. So who are you?
All right. Ken Harrington, Kenneth Fraser Harrington. How did I get into it? My earliest memories are from when I was about 4. I used to kick over pebbles in the garden and ask everybody, my dad, mum, relatives, and things, where are the red ones? And nobody could understand. Well, our family were the how do you put it? They were the chieftains of the Fraser clan in Scotland, and they lived in a castle, Fraser Castle. Unfortunately, my grandmother, great grandmother, had no brothers, so
Mhm.
everything was passed on to the present, all of it. castle, estates, money, everything. Um, right. Yes. So that was the history to it. Around, can't quite remember now. My Aunt Joan was asked up to see Lord Lovett and to have a dinner, which they did. After dinner, they were walking around the castle, and my Aunt Joan fell to her knees laughing because there were all the garnets, there were all the red pebbles.
So that
So
was.
you say it's
Had you
so it's genetic. So
had you been up there before, or
I've never been there,
oh,
much to my disgrace.
so you just knew that there should have been red stones in the ground somehow, genetic
Yeah,
memory?
I've always been interested in jewellery because, of course, the family jewellery was all the dirks and the brooches and so whenever I was on school holidays, I used to buy brooches and things for my mum or my nan and so forth. And I've only ever wanted to cut stones.
Okay.
So fortunately, my Uncle Brown, used to have a business importing French glass in Hatton Garden. And my mum had a word with him and he took me up to see Mr. Diamond.
Okay.
At the age of 14, I was apprenticed to Matthew's Lapidary.
And so you grew up in London before all that?
Yeah,
Okay. So
yes.
you were always in London. So then, okay, so you started your apprenticeship at 14. And that at that time, that was a normal thing to do, right? Apprenticeship was
Yeah,
a normal
that's
path.
right. That was normal.
Yeah.
You know, although my teacher, Mr. Woodcock, said that I was much too old as he started at 11.
Okay. But 11, and
Yeah.
even then, 11 would have been quite young for an apprenticeship
Yeah.
by the scheme of things.
Yeah.
So then, so I think I have. Well, tell us a little bit. What was the apprenticeship like? You know,
It was
how did it work?
it was very hard. It was a 60-hour week.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know how to express it really. It was just very, very intense atmosphere all the time. You know, you weren't allowed a radio on or anything like that.
Yeah.
And if things that don't happen, can't happen now, used to happen then. You know, if I dropped a stone on the floor, I'd get hit with a three-legged stool. You know, literally to
Yeah.
teach me not to drop stones.
Yeah. And so,
So
were there other apprentices there at the same time as you, or you're the only one?
I was the only one. It was very intense time. All the lapidaries there were about 11 of us in all, and all the lapidaries that were there wanted to teach me. They were all over 60, you know,
Yeah.
and I was 14, and they all had separate skills. They were all, you know, anyway, they were just simply trying to teach me their skills all the time.
Yeah.
It was quite intense.
Yeah. And so basically, in the way that this worked at that time, this was happening instead of like primary school, right? Like instead of high school, you would have just gone straight into like the workshop.
It depends what you mean by high school. We had junior school and then senior school.
Okay.
And senior school would have been, if I hadn't become a lapidary, I'd have gone to university. The headmaster tried very hard to make that happen.
Okay.
I wasn't interested.
Okay. So you knew already you had the calling somehow. So when you first went and met George Diamond, who was the shop manager, do you have a memory? What was it like to go in there the first time and see all that gear for the first time? I mean, I know that was a long time ago.
Yeah, no. I can still remember. I still remember that. What was it like? Well, it was just amazing to see how it was done. I expected, as a boy, I expected to see machines doing it. You know, that you would be operating machines or whatever, but actually doing it by hand. You know, that was cool.
Yeah. And so let me pull up a couple photos because I have a few photos that must have been during your apprenticeship. Because if you started at 14, this would have been in your third year. hold on, I lost my buttons here. Oh, here we go. So I've got this one. So for anybody who's ever seen the Webster Gems book, Robert Webster's Gems book, this is, I think this is 1978.
Yep.
Um, and this is from Ken's copy that he showed me. So he has his, he has his inscription in there. This is when he was 17 looking into the refractometer. And so this would have been, yeah, if you started at 14, this would have been about your third year. Now, I see that you're wearing like a suit jacket. Is that normal, or were you just dressing up for the photos?
No, it wasn't dressing up for the photos. That's, it's how I used to dress.
Okay. I mean, was
But I
there
was
like,
down in the office. I
yeah,
was down in Matthew's office. I wasn't in the workshop.
okay, okay. And so, and I got a few other ones. So this was George Diamond, doing his thing. This was the shop manager at Chas Matthews. And
Yeah.
then, and this isn't the building that you were in, but this is where the building was. I think this is a new building, right?
No, building. This is the building I was in.
Okay.
My bench was next to him. That's the one you can see.
Yeah.
Then there was another bench, a copper wheel.
Uh-huh.
Then a Caversham wheel, and then there was Mr. Woodcote. And that was in
Okay.
a straight line.
And so is he looking out the front window, or he's looking out the back? Do you think? Like, is
Sorry?
it, he's sitting in front of the window. Is he looking right out on Hatton Garden? Is he's in one of these windows?
No, that was at an angle.
Okay, so he's on the back side.
You couldn't see across the road. You only see up in the air.
Okay, okay. But so yeah, this just gives us a little, and I've got one more somewhere. Oh, here, just to give us a glimpse, as we're beginning this story of what was it like when you first went into the shop? It would have pretty much looked like this, right? You got a bunch of guys sitting around in sort of white lab coats, hand cranking, cutting wheels, and
Yep.
doing everything the old-fashioned way.
Yep.
And so
That was Victor Richardson. He was the best cutter I have ever met. He could paint facets on a stone. It was brilliant.
And so everything here, I mean, to my young modern eyes, everything looks very archaic. I mean, besides the fact that it's in black and white, it's hand cranked. It's really the old school method that many people don't use anymore. And in my journey, I found some, various old photos of the same kind of stuff from London. These ones are from like 1901.
Yeah.
And I'm just so surprised that, in 1901 and in 1960, whatever, nothing's really changed. They have light bulbs and jampegs and, different polishing powders, and everything's just by hand.
That's right.
So I guess in London, it's really, the way that you guys learned was like the old fashioned way in some sense, right?
Yes. Old fashioned way.
Or the traditional
Still...
way. Yeah. The traditional way. Yeah. I mean, I know it's still relevant now. I love it. When I go in and see what you guys are doing, it blows my mind.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because we haven't really said too much about what you guys are doing. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're gem cutting, but many of the people that are joining us, I'm guessing, are from American audience or using modern machines at least. I know in the last webinar, about half the people that were watching were gem cutters. So, we are among our peers here. So let's talk a little bit about the machine, the machine that you learned on. Can you give us an idea about how it works? And I'll pull up some photos as you go.
Okay. Well, the machine that I learnt on was a copper polishing wheel. That was driven by a motor.
Okay.
The reason that we have a hand crank on the cutting wheel is that we find it much more controlled. You don't take much weight off the stone, so you have it controlled how sharp the cut is.
Yeah.
You can go faster or slower, basically.
Yeah. And so I'll just put this up while we're talking, just so people can get a visual. This is a video that I shot in Ken's studio last year. And so this is exactly this is what you're talking about, right? This is the copper wheel that you were
That's what
essentially.
that is what I was that's what I was learning on.
Yeah.
Um, how would you put it? In those days, we used rotten stone and Tripoli. We didn't have diamond powder to work on.
Okay. Just because it was too expensive. They hadn't really made the synthetic, or I mean, they had the
It
synthetic at
wasn't
that time.
available. The diamond powder wasn't available until 1960-ish, 65-ish.
Wow. Okay. So they had invented it, but maybe it wasn't mass produced or mass available yet.
Yeah, right.
Something like that. Okay. Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. So everything, even rubies and sapphires, everything's going to be on Tripoli or rotten stone or something
Mud.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing your apprenticeship, you're learning cutting or polishing or cabochons or
I was
everything.
learning. Everybody was taught one thing. So if you were polishing, you were a polisher. If you were a cutter, you were a cutter. You didn't mix.
Hmm.
Um, I was very, very fortunate and lucky that we had Roy King step in. They wanted watch faces produced. So to do those, I had to take the rough, learn how the rough worked, cut and polish the stones and polish them.
So you were unique in that way because they usually didn't do
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
And then,
But these lapidaries trying to teach me their skills.
yeah.
So,
So then I'm guessing, but just from what you're saying, there's in the apprentice system, there's not really a formal plan. You just sort of jump in there and they show you what they show you. Is that how it was?
you spend 6 months learning to stick up stones
Okay.
you spend 6 months doing that, then sweeping the floors and running around and taking jobs around and things like that. It doesn't get more intense until you get older.
Yeah. So then, so in that 6 months when you're just learning, as you said, sticking up stones, dopping the stones,
Uh-huh.
is, let's take a minute to speak about that because, for the American style machines and for the machines that I use, I mean, we also spend some time dopping the stones and making sure that they're on perfectly. But how important is that for the jambpeg cutting that they're stuck on there in a certain way? What makes it take 6 months to learn how to do that?
Um, you've got me there. What takes 6 months? The fact that it's so important to get it right.
Yeah.
So you spend the first 6 months sticking up stones, so you know how to do it.
Yeah. And so is some of that just also just learning how to see in terms of like see proportions in terms,
That's
because
right.
you guys were, well, at least from what I know of the Chas Matthews story, you guys were doing a lot of very high-end stones, like always.
Yep, always.
So then, of course, if you don't dop correctly, the color is not in the right place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, you have
and then everything's with just wax, right? You guys just use rosewood dops and wax,
Yeah.
like shellac.
Help. Just like that.
Okay. So then after the first 6 months, where does it go from there? Does it depend on the job or?
Depends on the type of work coming in, because yes, we used to do a lot of work for Mr. Matthews himself, but there was lots of work that came in from all of the goldsmiths, stone dealers, etc. in the Hatton Garden area. There's lots of work came in from that, so it would depend on what work was coming in.
Okay.
I spent years just doing Sri Lankan sapphire.
Okay.
Or Ceylon sapphire as it was then.
Yeah.
And that was recutting the stones that have been originally cut in Ceylon.
Yeah.
We would recut to improve them. It was called a London cut.
Yeah, exactly. And that was and the London cut was basically, it's a mixed cut, right? A brilliant on top, step cut on the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you guys were doing, the stones that you spent so much time recutting, what was the original cut? Was it also a step cut or it was something else?
It was, how do you put it? Yes, it was. The fronts used to be a flat table, and very often two heights on four facets on an oval
Yeah.
with a simple triangle of a corner,
Okay.
and you'd have to turn it into a full brilliant.
So that was with a square table. Am I correct?
Well, no, it was oval stone.
Oval stones,
It
but
was,
with a square table.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay.
Had an
Okay.
oval stone,
Yeah,
a
I've
square
seen
table.
that. Yeah, it's a weird old Sri Lankan cut. I have seen a few like that. So, so you spent a long time doing that, but then, okay, so the moment when they decide if you're going to be the cutter or the polisher, is it really just depend on what they need in the shop at that moment? It doesn't have anything to do with your personality.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the personality.
It's just, okay, we
It's
need a polisher. Get in there.
to do with your how do you put it? It's to do with your ability at polishing. If you were a very good polisher, you wouldn't be asked to cut.
Mm,
If you weren't getting on too well with polishing, then you'd be given the job of cutting.
okay, you'd have to do that, or else.
Yeah.
Did
If,
anybody did is it possible to fail? Like, can you fail out of the apprenticeship if you're just not very suited towards gem cutting?
sorry, I couldn't help laughing at that because I got to 19 years old and George Diamond decided that I would never be any good as a lapidary. And
Really?
he got in touch with my dad to say that I should find something else to do. And it was Mr. Woodcock, my teacher, who turned around and said to him, "You're getting it wrong. If you give this guy another couple of years, he'll run the workshop."
Okay, so
And I did.
so there's obviously all kinds of different opinions and things going on in this studio.
Absolutely.
So then,
So, yeah.
once you finish the apprenticeship, I mean, you stayed on there full time for a little while, right?
Yes, no, I was there for 12 years.
Okay. So then I'm just curious, like as a professional gem cutter, in Hatton Garden, which is the gem district of London, really the center of the world at that time in some sense. What
Yes.
was what was the feeling like to be in that daily rhythm of just cutting really valuable stones in a team of people cutting stones? Because I think this is an experience most of us as gem cutters haven't had. Most of us are solitary cutters because we just haven't had any other
Yeah,
experience. So what was that like to be in an environment like that?
it was tense, but um, obviously, I was lucky in so much as there were so many people there with all their different skills.
Hmm.
So I didn't really get time to think about anything. It was just learn, learn, learn.
Yeah.
You know, you got to imagine 14 to 19 years of age. I'm doing 60 hours a week,
Yeah.
getting home, 9 o'clock, half nine at night. You know, it was very tiring.
Yeah. And did people talk, like, do people talk when they're working, or everyone's just really concentrated on what they're doing?
No, no one was allowed to talk. No radio, no talking, no nothing. And unfortunately, I've always talked. So I used to get into trouble a lot all the time.
Yeah.
But
That sounds like me at school as well. I always was a talker too, and I was always getting in trouble. So I feel
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So we had a question from the audience, from Dennis McGilvery. Um, and you sort of touched on this, but he's asking, did you do the whole stone start to finish, or you would do your part and then pass it on, or I guess as the polisher, maybe the cutter would do their part and then pass it on to
Well,
you?
you were learning. So I learned to do backs.
Hmm.
You know? And if I got into trouble, Mr. Woodcock would sort out what I was doing And then I learned to do tables. And then I learned to put brilliant work around. And if I got into trouble, Mr. Woodcock would sort out what I was doing. And you gradually learn to cut and polish, you gradually learn to polish the stone all over.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you guys really seem to break up all the different parts of the stone into almost different parts of the workshop. Like one guy maybe just does tables, one guy just does the girdle shape, one guy just does faceting the back or whatever. Is that accurate?
As it was, but not as it is.
Yeah.
I've taught everybody here, I've taught to cut and polish
Yeah.
their own stone.
And I know you and me have sort of talked about this on the phone before, but do you think there's some reasoning behind that, like in terms of, if you're the master of a workshop and you don't teach your cutter how to cut and polish, they can't really leave and start a competitive.
The expression that's often used, is you don't want to train your competition. Yeah, basically, that's what the theory. I think in some places, in some quarters, it still runs along those lines.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think it's valid, or that was a no?
It's not valid.
Yeah.
I go back to when I first went to Matthews, and all of the lapidaries there wanted to teach me their skills, right?
Yeah.
And from their point of view, that didn't come into the equation. It was just simply to pass on the knowledge, and that's what I've always tried to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we haven't really mentioned, but you are currently sitting in your own studio right now where you've trained what, 5 or 6 new cutters.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know if your phone is fixed, but maybe can you give us a little tour of the studio right now?
Yes, of course.
Okay, yeah, that's good. We can see.
Okay, then that's good. This is just a simple lathe to drill stones.
Okay.
Although the drilling was taught to me by a lapidary at Matthews called Colin Smith, and we drill horseshoe-shaped holes, not straight ones.
Okay.
We make our own drills, etc.
I see. So one side and then the other.
Yeah, that's right. And then join them up as a horseshoe. And that way the stones don't break.
So,
this is the hand crank cutting wheel. You see that?
yeah, I can't. Yeah. So then off to the left somewhere, there's a crank. I see the wheel.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, there we go. There's the wheel, or there's the crank.
Yeah. So that's cutter.
And you guys sell these, right? Like if someone wanted to buy one, you guys manufacture them in some sense, or who makes these?
Yes, we have to have them made for us.
Okay.
You can't buy them.
Yeah. So are they just made by like
an
engineer? Okay.
We get hold of an engineering company, and they make them for us.
Very cool. So still keeping the past alive. Okay, so that's the cutting station. So hand crank, no electricity, other than the
jam, of course.
Yeah, and the jam.
Yes. Yeah, we prefer to have a different pressures on the hence the crank. We can go at different speeds and different pulls. That's the important part, is the pull that you put behind the facet. And you have the saws.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you can see and what you can't. You see?
Yeah, no, it's good. We can see.
Okay, so that's the diamond blades.
Okay.
Although when I learnt to saw, which was Jack Harris taught me to saw, and we used the lid from a baked bean can, knock a hole through the center, fire it up sharp, and use silica carbide powder to saw with.
Okay.
Which is a bit different today.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, more than we have.
Yeah, that's right. This we used for making the copper to make up tools that we want, because we didn't have anybody to buy tools from. We had to make what tools we wanted to use. Go back over here for a second. the copper tubes. Can you see that?
Ye I don't know.
Can you or not?
Yeah, I see. I mean, it's kind of far away though.
It's kind of far away.
Yeah.
If I bring it close,
Yeah, yeah, okay,
is that
okay. Yeah,
okay? That's a tube,
yeah.
and that's how round stones are. And we put them in the stick and put them inside there and twiddle them around, and
Oh, just
it gives you an accurate round stone in the shortest possible time.
oh, okay. So it's just holding them so you can spin the stick.
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. But that was we learned to do that. We learned to make those when we had a wonderful necklace come from a jewelers called Harris's. They were the only jewelers in Hatton Garden. They were on the corner, and they had this wonderful, really wonderful Russian emerald bead necklace come in,
Hmm.
and we had to chop them, all the emeralds, in half. I mean, they were big stones, and we had to chop the emeralds all in half and make round stones out of them.
Wow.
And you couldn't afford, they were hundreds of pounds a point. You know, you couldn't afford not to run them. So we learnt the copper tube, get them round as quick as possible, take off as little weight as possible.
Okay. And somebody just asked why we're still looking at that. Can you change the laps on those machines, or they're just on there forever?
They're on there forever. They're on there for your lifetime. You never have to change them.
Wow. Okay. So just one lap per machine. And are both of the cutting machines the same? They're running at the same gear speed, or are they different?
Yes, no, they're absolutely the same. It's just that
Okay.
two people can cut rather than one.
Okay. Okay. And then so then over here you were going on to the polishing station?
Yes, this is the pewter,
Okay.
which we use with diamond powder for polishing some stones, so zircons, topaz, peridots, things like that, emeralds even.
Okay.
Uh, and that's the copper polisher.
Okay. And so the polishing ones, they're not hand crank anymore. They're electric now, right?
Yeah, they've always been electric. You know,
Yeah.
we used to use direct current and have rheostats on them, but the rheostats were never very efficient.
Okay. Rheostat,
Uh,
that's like for changing the speed.
yes, that is
Okay.
right. It changes the speed, but what it also did was take the pull away. And if you were trying to fuse the floor, there is no way there is no way that the slow
Okay.
speed would work because you lost the power.
So the way you have it now, because you have speed controllers on there now, but it's AC now?
It's AC, but there's no speed controllers.
Oh, really? Yours are just fixed.
Yeah, they're fixed speed.
Okay, because some other ones that I saw in London, they did have a variable speed on them. Maybe those
Did
ones are,
they?
yeah, maybe they're still AC though. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I never realized yours were only at one speed. So then they just run
Yeah.
at that one
May
speed.
I just put this on for a second? I'll show you something.
Yeah,
This
sure.
is how we change the speed.
But we can see it though. It doesn't run very fast. So you guys are not running at a super fast speed.
No, not at all.
Okay. And then next to it, you've got the copper, same setup on copper.
Yeah, that's right.
And so then are you just using the copper just for harder stones?
Yes, that's the sapphires and rubies generally. Although rubies can be much softer than sapphire. Then we'll go on to the pewter wheel, especially with
Okay.
the flaws. That's another
Okay. That's
the wheel with diamond. This is softer. This is more lead than it is tin.
okay. So
Okay.
what's the idea behind that one?
Some stones prefer a softer. How would you put it? They just prefer a softer bed
Mm-hmm.
to get a polish.
Yeah.
You know this one can be a bit harsh on some stones.
Okay.
You know, it can be. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it can be. So you would then use this wheel,
Okay.
and it does get used.
Okay.
Okay. This is another copper polisher,
Mm-hmm.
the same as the one over there. This is my favorite.
Okay.
This is what I learned from watch faces.
Okay. And
Okay. This is how to use the bill below.
okay. So I guess it maybe, I don't know if we want to bring that up later or yeah, maybe we'll come back to that. We'll come
Yeah,
back to that
but
one.
this is the wheel. This is dead flat, and we keep it dead flat. No faceting on there at all.
Just
So
tables.
if you wanted to use a pewter wheel for faceting, you would use that one.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't use that one, or that. That's
Okay.
out of bounds.
And so
Oh dear.
after okay, show us, there's a few more things. So what are we looking at here?
Well, this is just a lathe head, which is motorized. We can turn anything on there.
Okay.
And this took me 10 years, literally 10 years of experimenting. This wheel is mahogany, but
Okay.
it's old mahogany with no resin in it. So
Okay.
you have to find an old table that's beaten up, mahogany table, and cut it up into wheels. It's not easy.
And so what do you guys do with that one?
The polished cabochons.
Okay.
But the reason for the work on it was what we're going to talk about later.
Okay. Okay. The secret.
Yes, Bill be last, so I can talk about it then, not
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
So good tour. I think it's really interesting, especially for us American cutters who are used to using so many laps. It's kind of cool to see that you guys are also using a bunch of different laps. Just you have to have a machine for each one, basically.
yeah. Okay. So right. There
So
we go.
well, that inspired many questions from the audience. So let me go through some of those real quick. So when you first have a brand new machine, this is from Chris Mowat, by the way. Are those holes already in the jambpeg head, or do you put those in yourself? Like
Put
when
them
you,
in ourselves.
because
But
I guess you guys are manufacturing them, so somebody has to put them in, right?
we just put them in ourselves. It's
Yeah.
how do you put it? Um, they're not given angles. The angles are inside your head.
Okay.
That's it. Quite simply, stops the stick from moving up.
Okay. So
Okay, what the angles are inside here.
it doesn't really matter where the holes are at. You just want to have a bunch of different ones just to give you some options.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And then just to be a little bit more specific, when you're doing your fine adjustment, you can pull that jam peg up and down, right? It has some up and down movement, so you can adjust your
Yeah.
facets.
Can you see that?
No, just twist it over. Just turn the camera a little bit if you can. A little bit to your. Yeah. Okay.
Easy.
No, we can see now.
Hold on. Can you see now?
Yep, it's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can just wiggle it up.
That just moves up and down. When you want to put a facet on, the stone is in your hand, and you decide that facet's there, and you put it into, and you put the facet on.
Yeah.
So all the angles are inside your head.
Yeah. And so basically, just to give it some context for the American audience, that's basically the same as what we have as a fine adjustment knob. If you guys want to, go a little bit up or down on the facet, you can just twist the head up or down. And then if you want to jump, you use different holes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, for us, when we have our indexes, so we're rotating the gear around, you guys are just literally rotating your hand a little bit or changing the stone around in your hand. So how long does it take to learn how to be able to make those subtle twisting motions to, really put the facets where they're meant to go?
To learn to be a lapidary takes 7 years.
Okay. Because it seems hard. I mean, I tried to do it a little bit before, and it's very hard.
So
I was just saying I found it very hard the times that I've tried to use that kind of machine. It's really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Even
it takes time to learn.
Yeah. Even just to polish a facet that's already there, just finding the facet, it's all feeling. There's nothing but feeling. Yeah.
That's
Okay,
right.
so a few more questions. Do you change the grit size on the cutting lap?
Yes, we use 400 mesh.
So you just, everything's always the same. You don't need to change. There's just one
No.
step of cutting, right?
Yeah, there's one step of cutting
So you
and
cut
then
all the,
goes straight onto the polishing wheel.
okay. So then what's your guys' order? Do you cut the whole stone top and bottom and then give it to the polisher, or do you keep it dopped and give it to the polisher while it's still in there and then flip it over later?
Well, the polisher just takes it as a finished cut stone and polishes it.
But I mean, do they have to put it back up on a stick, or it's already on the stick from you or from the,
No, you have to put it on the stick. We don't change the sticks on the cutting bench to the polishing bench
ah,
for fear of transferring diamond powder.
okay. So there's some,
Once the cutter has finished the stone, he puts it in a packet and gives it to the polisher.
cool. So then 400 for the cutting, and then the polishing. I think you guys are using two different grits on your polishing lap, right? The inside and the outside are
Correct.
different. So then
Yes,
what's your polishing grits?
it's 0 to 5 and 3/4 to 1.
Okay,
0 to
so
5 is sharp, allows you to move the facet. 3/4 to 1 gives fine polish.
and I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm because I actually recently started using almost the same sequence in the same way that you are with the two rings.
Uh huh.
And I think
Yeah.
that pretty equivalent to the American sequence of doing 8,000 and then 60,000. That's I think 0.5 is either around 3,000 or 8,000 grit, and three
Mhm.
quarters to one is about 60,000. It's not exactly, but I think it's about. And that's actually what I started doing too. Since COVID started, I changed my polishing sequence to that, and it's
Yeah.
awesome. It's really fast,
Yes,
and you
it is.
just jump one ring to the next ring.
That's right.
When you guys do it, do you do the whole stone on 0.5 and then do it again on 0.1, or do you just
No,
one facet at a time?
you cut the facet where you want it to be. On the polishing wheel, you polish the facet on 0 to 5, and then just run it across onto the 3/4, and it polishes. Puts a fine polish on.
Yeah. And I guess to me, the most shocking thing is the fact that you guys are cutting on 400 and jumping straight. But I guess now that I really understand that you guys are starting with the 0.5, maybe it makes more sense to me now. 400 to 0.5 isn't as extreme as I imagined when I was there last year. So it seems like it's such a big jump, but actually it's not that, I guess it's not that big of a deal. How how accurate do you guys make the meet points on the 400 grit before taking it to the polishing lap?
Well, Victor Richardson, as I said, could paint facets on. I'm not that good.
Okay.
Basically speaking, but I cut the stone the way I can handle it on the polisher.
Okay.
We point everything up on the polishing wheel.
Okay. So it's pretty loose when it's coming off the 400 as far as meet points and stuff.
It's pretty good, but you can put the 8 broads round a round or an oval,
Hmm.
and on the polisher you can quite literally put all the print work on.
Okay. So when you do the 400 grit, do you just do the main 8 facets, or do you do some of the smaller facets too?
Very often put smaller facets on as well,
Okay. Just
but
to,
it's not. It just takes the edge off when you go onto the polishing lap.
okay. Okay.
The
And so,
accuracy is on.
yeah, I totally understand. I do the same. I do the same. Somebody had asked, this is from Susan. She asked, um, w- for the electric wheels, for the polishing wheels, are they running at a specific RPM, or is it just whatever it is?
It's not whatever it is. I can't tell you what it's running at, but the motors run at 1,400 revs a minute.
But then,
And we put a 2-inch pulley on the
okay,
motor. So we put an 8-inch pulley on the polishing wheel.
okay. But it
So
seems pretty slow. I would guess maybe 300 or 400 RPMs. It seems like, just from what I just saw right there.
yeah,
It's probably about
set
right.
I don't know.
Yeah. And so somebody had asked, Rod Knowles asked, when you were talking about your different metal laps, let's speak about that a little bit, because I wanted to ask that question too. Um, so you're using a pewter lap. That's the
Yeah.
one that's behind you right now. So it's mixing lead
Yep.
and tin. And then
Yeah.
the one that's sitting that we can't see right now, it's a different mixture of lead and tin that's more lead than the other one, right?
Yeah.
It's softer.
The one behind me is 60-40, 60% tin,
Mhm.
40% lead.
Okay.
Uh, this one, I can't actually, it's an old wheel. I can't actually remember what it was. But I think it's probably 50-50 or
Okay.
it's 60-40 the other way around.
Okay. So it's more lead. It's okay, maybe half and half. Um,
The there is in the past that taught me used lead wheels. They didn't have pewter wheels.
so they're just pure lead.
Yeah.
Interesting. And did you use those as well when you were learning?
Yes.
But so
They're great on tables and they're great for doing, sort of say, straight facets and things. But when you put onto a lead wheel a sharp facet, it cuts a groove.
okay, because it's too soft.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, it's kind of cool. You guys have different types of metals, mixtures of metals that are giving you, I guess for us now, we're using so many kinds of um, modern laps, that are some plastics, some are ceramics, some are different types of metal. But even though you guys are in a sort of more traditional way, you still have a variety of laps that you're using as well for different stones. You're not just going to use one lap for everything.
that's right.
Yeah. So it's quite cool. Um,
Yeah.
so let's see there was a couple other questions. What is the L-shaped thing that's over the lap wheel in the spindle? So I think they're talking about the top of this.
Crouch arm.
Yeah.
They're talking about the crouch arms. These.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
just what's holding the spindle up, right?
yeah, that's right. It has a wooden block, usually teak,
Hmm.
which the spindle is pointed, and
Yeah.
it just acts as a bearing.
Okay.
Um, but the crouch arms, they just hold the. Sorry, they just hold the piece in position.
Okay. And that's just the design. That's just it doesn't really matter. It's just something that hold the spindle up in terms of
Yes,
it's just
that's
the
right.
design. It's just part of the machine design. But the teak is actually kind of important, right? Because the teak is self-lubricating.
Yes, that's right. And it's hard.
I think also, maybe if I'm not mistaken, the other ones that I've seen, they weren't using teak. I think they were using rosewood or something. That's another one that
Yeah,
can a
yeah,
hard.
rosewood as well.
Okay. So essentially that's your bearing, right? Or that's sort of your bearing in some way, or your
Yes, it is.
because underneath of the machine there's another one of those teak.
That's
Um,
there's
so there's
another
no,
block.
so there's no actual bearing in the machine. The piece of metal is going through the table and not touching it. Is that correct?
That's right.
Wow. So putting that thing in there has to be absolutely perfect.
It has to be accurate. Yes.
So how long do you have to do that very often, or every year or something to, if you have to resurface?
But it's very, very seldom.
Okay. So once in a lifetime maybe, or
Well, no, if you could change it a couple of times in 10 years or something like that.
okay. And so Barry Johnson asks, is pewter the same as type metal? I'm not sure of the answer to that. Do you know? Type metal?
No. What do you mean, type metal?
Type metal, as far as I know, it's like when they had printing presses and they were making metal movable type.
I don't know.
Okay, they had a certain kind of mixture that they were using. I have one, but I'm not sure what the mixture
Yeah,
is. But I know it's some kind of a tin, but I'm not sure.
yeah.
Um, okay, and so okay, so this question's been asked two times in a different way, but
Huh?
have
I'm
you
just
ever,
plug.
oh, what?
Sorry, I'm just going to plug the lead into the phone.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, that's it. Right.
So have you ever, okay, here's the question. This, I think now I'm looking more, this has been asked 3 times in different ways. Have you ever used another kind of faceting machine, like a mast or a handpiece or anything but the
No,
jambpeg? Never tried.
never tried. I've never needed to.
Yeah. So from your point of view and the way that you've been trained, I mean, I guess you can do anything that you want to do with that machine. So there's not really an incentive to try a different type. Is that,
That's right.
yeah.
That's, we do so many different types of work. I mean, if you look at the skill of Jen's pocket watches made in crystal, rock crystal, you know, it's clip fitting. There's no um, there's no allowance for getting your things wrong.
Hmm.
So we do everything by hand.
Okay. Because it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, from your guys' point of view, you know, especially you have been using the machine for so long, do you have an awareness or an opinion about the other types of machines that are out there? Like, you know, for the guys that you knew and for yourself
Mhm.
and the people that you work with, are you guys even aware of the other types of faceting machines out there, or it's just outside of your awareness completely?
It's not outside of my awareness. I know there's a place for everything.
Mm,
Don't misunderstand me. Um, I'm aware of that, but there is no need for us to go into using machines. It just isn't a need for us.
yeah.
It's not a lack of interest. It's we haven't got time. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, because you guys are working well with the trade, right? I mean, you guys are getting work pretty regularly from London and
Oh yeah.
from around. So basically, once you're in that rhythm, there's no more play time, right? Unless you're going to go on the weekends and play around.
Usually I'm working weekends,
Yeah.
but no, it's how do you put it? Um, yeah, I see some wonderful cutting on Instagram. You know,
Mm,
nice pieces which are cut by machine. I
yeah.
also see horrible pieces that you know you turn them around and there's windows everywhere. I hate that.
Yeah.
But you know, I've got one of your guys that's listening in now, and I love him to bits. He does some wonderful work.
Okay, so here's another good question, and I actually have never asked you this before. How long does it take to cut and polish a stone? Or in another way, how many stones can you guys do in a day?
It depends entirely on their size.
Yeah. Well, let's
You
let's
know,
let's let's make a
the 60
hypothetical.
carat, all right, the 60 carat sapphire I did a while back. Beautiful stone, natural Sri Lankan stone, cornflower blue, absolutely fabulous. It's finished at 60 carats. That took me 12 hours.
That was from rough?
You know, yeah, I'm from rough.
Okay, 60 carats, 12 hours. So that's pretty quick. 60 carats is a
You know,
big stone. What
yeah,
about
it's a big lump of stone.
what about like a 3 carat stone, like a 3 carat sapphire for a ring or something like that?
Well, from start to finish, to cut and polish the stone, generally speaking, like 3 hours for a 4 carat stone. It's
Okay.
not uncommon. Um, if repolishing stones can be done in an hour, you
Okay.
know,
So if you're just changing the facet pattern, fixing up some mistakes,
yeah,
so just a few hours. Wow, that's really fast actually. That's much faster than I thought. So, okay. So we can see that there is definitely a competitive advantage here because I don't know about everyone in the audience, but I think for me and most of the people that I know, 6 hours is about a good amount of time to do a stone from start to finish. Unless I really get into a rhythm, maybe I can do 2 or 3 stones in one day if I'm doing the same thing over and over again. But yeah, if you're doing them in 3 or 4 or 5, that's good.
yeah. It's you know, we get batches of rough.
Mm.
where we're cutting from rough into finished stones. Um, and obviously, that takes time cutting and polishing, but generally speaking, a carat-sized stone is not going to take more than 2 hours. You know,
Okay.
3 carats, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe not 4 hours. No,
I
it depends.
just I just realized that like some of your employees are in here answering all the other questions. I love this. I'm gonna have to go back through the chat later and I'm not really reading it, but I just realized like, oh, they're answering all the questions. That's great. I like that. Thank you guys. Um, so Susan asked, is your studio available to be visited? Like, can people come and see what you guys are doing, or is it private?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay.
You know,
So
we've had one or two people that use machines, have been taught on machines, would like to come, and we have one young lady, without mentioning names, who was here for a month.
yeah.
She loved, I don't know, there's a feeling of doing things by hand, you know?
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, that feeling, that's kind of what keeps drawing me back to guys like you, you know. I've become really convinced now that there is this experience that you guys are having, and I say you guys meaning you guys in London, the guys in Paris, you know, the
yeah,
other jmpeg metters that I've met, and especially the ones using the hand crank machines. I
yeah,
just have this feeling that there is an experience that you guys are having, a relationship with the stones that is somewhat not present for us electric machine users. And I've never fully cut a stone. Maybe next time I come visit, I'll be able to try, but I've never fully cut a stone on one of those machines. But I have a feeling that there is a experience that I have yet to have with the gemstone that I'm searching for,
yeah.
and I just have the feeling that you're having it regularly. I could be wrong. I might
No,
just be
that's right.
romanticizing. Yeah.
Mhm. No, it's um, you're working with the stone. You're not deciding anything for the stone. The stone is talking to you. Uh, that's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is very romantic at the same time, though. I mean, as a gem cutter, I think we love to think about this, and we love to have this sort of experience, co-creating, you know, with nature in that way. So
Yeah,
yeah, but I love the way that you guys, you know, with the hand cranking and just no gears, no nothing, just your eye and your hand, and you have really made an art out of, you know, something somewhat simple but very complicated at the same time.
yes, I'd agree.
Yeah. What's your opinion about the cutting that's going on in Asia? Because of course you've recut many stones from Sri Lanka, and I'm sure you've probably recut some from Thailand as well. How do you guys see
Yep.
those cuts?
All right. Um, Generally speaking, I'm full of admiration. I love the work that they do.
Hmm.
Um, we had one lapidary at Matthews called Albert Silverthorne, if I get his name right after all these years. It's Albert, but I think it's Silverthorne. But he was the one that was a uh, hang on a second. Now, yeah, he was the one that was really into the science of stones.
Hmm.
Um, he he cut and polished a triangular rock crystal with specific angles, with one table,
Mm-hmm.
obviously on the front, and three facets only on the front, and only three on the back.
Okay.
And he tried to patent it because whatever dark corner you threw it into, it shone back like a diamond.
Wow.
He was always interested in what the angles, how the angles affect the color or the brilliance of the stone, and it varies per stone. There's no given,
Yeah.
working with it. A lot of the Sri Lankan stones that came, um, by me, the top angles were very often too high
Okay.
to the next step down. So that we used to specialize in putting facets in between the two heights, okay, because they would create a window and we didn't want the window.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then by altering the angles on the back, you can get a much deeper color stone, you know, so,
Right.
and prettier.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. So recutting, but I love their work. I very often put Sri Lankan backs on stones because it keeps the belly in the stone
Yeah.
and keeps the color of the stone.
Yeah.
So you
Well, let's follow that thread a little bit. We haven't really spoke at all about styles, cutting styles. And I know you guys are mostly specialized in a few classic ones. So what's your guys' usual kind of cut that you're going to put on in terms of brilliant or step cut or emerald cut or whatever? You know, if you're working on sapphires, how do you decide how to cut the stone in terms of what's the front pattern, what's the back pattern?
well, the first thing is to locate where the color is and place that into the culet. If it's not over dense stone, it's saying that it's a normal, say it's a Sri Lankan sapphire. Then you put the color of the sapphire because the rest of it will be nearly white. You put the color into the culet so that the whole stone lights up blue.
Yeah.
You know, so that depends. There you get your Sri Lankan back again on the stone. So the front of it will, generally speaking, on an oval stone, we put a brilliant front on.
Okay. So is there any situation where you guys don't do brilliant fronts? I mean, aside from emeralds and emerald cuts?
Yes, it's where you have a trap cut stone.
Okay.
Uh, I'm trying to think. No, not generally. It's
Okay.
true. The cut suits the stone.
Yeah. But I'm just
You
trying
know?
to think about, because I know for the American cutters, there's a lot of interest in like cutting hundreds of different types of designs. But I know for you guys, there are some standards that really work for many, many things.
Yeah.
So basically, we said the emerald cut, the step cut or trap cut, and the brilliant top.
Yeah.
And then for the back though, do you guys ever do brilliant backs or is it always going to be like a trap cut back?
No, we do brilliant backs. Um, it depends where it suits.
Mm,
It's what the stone. It's how much belly there is in the stone.
hmm.
It's how many facets you want on there, or what color you're trying to achieve. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the stone tells you that. So the facets that go on are according to what the stone wants.
Yeah. And so when you're first looking at the stone and you're making, you're looking at the color, the shape, the inclusions, and you're figuring out in your mind what it's going to become. What's the actual first step of cutting? Is it preforming in your hands or do you dop it
We
up
preform
first?
in our hands.
Yeah.
We have a look and see, where the stone's looking back at you is, where the brilliance is, where the color is, and then it's orientating between that and the flaws that are there.
Okay.
Then the stone gradually takes shape, but it takes the shape it wants to be. You don't decide in advance whether you're going to have a round stone, trap cut stone, kite shaped stone, or whatever.
Yeah. So, okay, here's another interesting question from the audience. Since you've started, what's been the best innovation that's changed the cutting the most, or made your time easier in terms of technology? Has anything changed since 1960? Or
Well, the saw blades help, um, but uh, I've altered one or two things in the way machines are set up. But no, not really.
okay, so I guess there's a reason why it's time tested, and there's a reason why people in London have been using these same machines since like the 1820s. Like it
Right.
it works. I think for me, when I look at the way that you guys, the way that you guys work, and the whole apprenticeship system, because of course I don't think anyone could learn how to do that without someone to help, because it just takes so long. I think probably the biggest difference from what I've seen of looking at so many different types of machines is really just the time it takes to learn. You know,
Yeah,
I think what you do is comparable to any cutter that I know anywhere in the world as far as quality, but it took you really a long time to get to that point, right?
absolutely,
But there,
absolutely.
but at the same
7 years.
time,
Hmm.
sorry, say it again.
7 years is the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, I know some of the guys at Matthews had told me, it wasn't until like I got to the 10-year mark that I came into work one day, and then I finally understood what I'd been doing for the last 10 years, like it took 10 years.
Absolutely, absolutely accurate.
And so, like when I look at that, that's a lot to ask from a new cutter, especially now, to take 10 years to learn how to do something before you're ready to actually do it as your job. It's hard to
I'm
do
aware.
that.
I'm very aware.
Yeah.
I'm very. I, I find it amazing when people start cutting stones and they've learned how to do it in 6 weeks or 10 weeks or so.
Yeah.
You know, that's incredible. It's incredible. Now I understand why it's necessary, and you're
Yeah.
right. To get some sit down and learn for 10 years is, you know,
At the same time, though, from what I've learned from you, and from my wife as well, who did a similar apprenticeship in Geneva, there's so many things that you're going to experience in those 10 years, aside from just learning how to use the machine and cut, learning the different types of stones, learning which stones use which laps, having a master there to tell you when you're making a stupid mistake, or just to tell you when your oval's not right. That's so helpful. And I think for most cutters who just learn at home or learn from the lapidary clubs, it's not that easy, because if you're not really in the trade, there's so much that you just, you know like just speaking to customers or getting orders, like
yeah.
it's its own thing that's outside of just cutting, but it's very, very important for the business side of it.
You mentioned their ovals, you know,
Yeah.
and that's a big hang up of mine when I get to repolish stones. Um, um, we get stones coming in, and we were taught as apprentices that the way you um, understand the craftsman is on an oval is if his edge is straight, right?
Hmm.
Because the facets actually have to lift as you go from the sides round the ends.
Yeah.
And a lot of cut stones, forgive me, are all cut on the same height going round. So the edge goes thin and thick all the way around.
Okay, you're talking
Um,
about the girdle thickness, right? Like it's
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So it can be here, it can be there, it can be all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, the facets actually have to rise as they go round the stone.
I see. So if they just treated it like it was a circle, like a round, then
Yeah,
the ends are going to be squished a little bit, because
they're
they're
going to be square. So the
yeah.
ends go square on the stone because the end facet, which should be higher, drops through the edge.
Yeah, I see. So then you can really tell if someone's been really caring about what they're doing, or just cutting without looking.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's kind of amazing to me that you guys are, obviously taking that much care of each aspect of the stone, but at the same time going really, really fast, and of course doing everything just by eye and hand. It's really admirable to me to see that. I think so many people have a sort of a negative connotation of the jambpeg cutter. I mean, especially because we've been seeing so many bad cuts from Thailand and stuff. It's,
Yeah.
just the cheap ones, really. It's because I don't want to put the Thai cutters down. Like you said, they are really, really good at what they do, but some of
Yep.
them, some of them are meant to go fast, and that's what they do, not cut
Well,
good. Yeah.
I understand that.
But okay, another question from the audience. This one's a little bit interesting. Going back to the question about facet patterns and designs. Do you guys ever cut? So he's asking about a specific cut called the Berrien, which do you know about the Berrien cut? Have you heard of this?
I have heard the name. Yeah, explain it to me.
It's kind of like, it's basically a brilliant cut. This is how I see it. It's a brilliant cut that has a step and then a brilliant cut. So you keep some weight in the cut, but it has some really finely adjusted angles that all kind of meet together and make this sort of
It
half moon.
sounds brilliant.
Yeah. It's but it's a little
Yeah,
bit different. It has a step in it as well.
yeah, that's right.
It makes this sort of half moon shape. So he's
Yeah.
he's he's wondering, do you guys ever do cuts like this where there's some very slight changes in the angles, or like hearts and arrows is another example. There's really, really small changes in the angles to make those patterns.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So I guess everything's just about looking at the stone, right?
Yeah,
Seeing what it
that's
needs.
right. If you're doing a heart shape, you're doing a heart shape. You know,
Hmm.
doing a kite shape, you're doing a kite. So it goes on.
And then, okay, here's another good question, and I know there's a little bit of a story here. Megan Coghill was asking, has anyone from outside of the jewelry trade ever approached you guys to do work, such as the optics community, the defense, army people?
Um, um, that's not something I'd like to answer.
Okay, that's fine. Confidentiality, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk. Okay, I want to get into the Bilby layer, but before we get there, because we were just talking about learning and teaching, let's talk about, you've started your own studio since the early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
And you guys, you've gone from being a one-person studio to training a lot of other people, including your current apprentice, Ryan.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk a little bit about teaching and especially, I guess, teaching in the 2000s, because of course you learned in the 60s. It was a totally different world. I mean,
Yeah.
London's changed, Hatton Garden's changed, the whole world has changed since that time.
That's right.
So what is it like now to teach new cutters today?
Well, if we're talking about Ryan, he was a natural. He
Mm.
just literally cut and polished a stone in no time. I can't remember now if it was a week or 2 weeks, but he'd cut and polished a stone himself.
And there's Ryan, just so
There
you know who we're talking
he
about.
is.
So
Yeah.
Ryan's currently in universities, doing gemology, but he's coming back in the summers for his apprenticeship.
It's not actually an apprenticeship. He's just learning. He's just interested.
Yeah.
He came in to see us one day. I can't remember what it was. Found it would buy some beads or a rock or something like that, and stayed. So he was with us for 3 years. But then, university is his future.
Yeah. And so there's
Um,
there's the team. So that's
that's
when I
right.
visited with all of the apprentices now turned professionals, right?
That's right.
And so
Absolutely.
everybody that
Chris,
works with.
Chris, in the photograph, you have Chris there.
Okay.
Um, this is a few years ago now, but he had his work exhibited at St. Paul's by the Goldsmiths Company.
Oh wow.
He took a piece of rutilated quartz, um, and it was a white stone, just with
Mhm.
a slight brown color patch in it. And he placed it into the cure, and fastened it with the needles up straight through
Okay.
the stone. And it just turned into a champagne color. It was absolutely fabulous.
Wow.
They exhibited it. He was in St. Paul's for quite a while. But yeah, he did that after a year. So,
Okay. So it doesn't always take 10 years then. You can do some.
well, to learn everything, it takes 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, George Diamond, for example, did the handle to the Stalingrad sword. Russia turned around and asked him to go and work for them. So yes, there's carvings, there's drilling, there's sawing,
Yeah.
there's pre-forming, there's all sorts of things.
And okay, one thing I wanted to pop up just as a funny picture. So we've got Ryan here, and this is last year in 2019, and,
Uh-huh.
and then we've got this other guy in 1901 in London,
Uh-huh.
and I just love that they're like in the exact same position. They're using the same machine. Nothing,
Exactly.
almost nothing has changed. Really, the only thing major is the way that they're holding the spindle on with this overhead beam instead of that thing you guys are using.
Yeah.
But quite interesting. Not much has changed. And I also like comparing that picture to the picture of George Diamond because they're both wearing the same white lab coat.
Yep. That's right.
Was everybody doing that when you were in the apprenticeship? Was that the uniform or is that just him?
No, some people used a, oh, what do you call it? Oh, I'm trying to think. Memory's gone. It's just, yeah, it's an apron. Thank you. I was just told. They wore an apron. Albert Silverthorne wore an apron. Mr. Woodcock wore an apron. You know, I didn't personally like them
Okay.
because wiping stones onto the apron, impregnated the apron with diamond powder and very often rubbed the edges of the facets. So I didn't particularly like them. I
Okay.
prefer my own.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw you doing that here in this
Yeah,
clip. You're just using. I know I saw. There's some cutters in Korea, and they just wear
uh,
a white. They wear a white glove on their left hand, and they do the same thing as you, but they have a glove on, and then they just
yeah,
change. They just change the glove every day,
yeah,
and that's how. But same thing, just wipe it on the hand.
yeah. That's right. That's good for me.
Okay, so here's a. Oh yeah, so Ryan commented and said he was buying a Christmas present whenever he came in the first time and met
There
you
you
guys, and then changed his life forever. I guess that was a Christmas present it was a Christmas present for him, I guess, really.
Great guy.
But so Chris Moa asked the question, when you first started your apprenticeship, and I think this is a great question, by the way, what did your teachers understand about the critical angle of the stone and how to get the certain angle to get the get the color and get the flash coming out of the stone? Were they aware of that, or not so much?
That was Albert Silverthorne. He was very aware of what all the angles on a stone did to it. Exact angles on the back of zircons. Yeah, you get a zircon cut.
Hmm.
So exact angles on the zircon, all the stones. So particularly, he was extremely good at sapphires.
Mm,
So, and you can alter the color drastically on which angles you got on the back of a sapphire.
yeah.
Uh,
But even though you guys don't have numerical angles on your machine, I know you guys are really aware of how to not make windows, right? Like there's no
well,
question about making a flat stone.
no,
Yeah. When I know that when I was doing the research for the article that I was working on, and I guess we should mention this, that the Matthews Studios that you guys were working at was literally around the corner from Gem A. And so all of the gemology students and the gemology teachers and the lab would have been right around the corner from you guys. So it wasn't like you were in a different world than the world of gemology. You were in almost in the same block.
that's right.
So, and I know, well, one of the things that I had read was actually Charles Matthews specifically saying, the reason why we have such good stones is because we understand gemology, and the Sri Lankan guys that were recutting, they don't understand about the angles and about, and and to me, when I'm writing
Correct.
the article, this is kind of one of the points I'm making for London Cutters was like, Gem A was the first gemology school in the world, as far as I know, and Chas Matthews was always there, and he knew those guys, like Webster and everybody else, back
Yeah,
in the early 1900s. He was
yeah,
friends with those guys.
that's right.
And he was a gemologist as well. You know, he was trained in
Yeah,
gemology when he started
yeah,
the original cutting factory.
that's right.
So, but I wonder how much of that is actually transmitted between the cutters. Like you said, is it just one guy who really obsesses about that, or does everybody have a pretty good knowledge about the
They
depth
all
of
have
the
different skills. They all have different skills. Um, as I said, Colin, he taught me to undercut stones, where you've got them stuck up and you're doing shapes. You
stone?
tilt them and just cut the facets from the back. And he taught me to drill, you know. Um, yeah, Albert was the one with the science. Mr. Woodcock was the one that fused the flaws.
Okay. So I think it's time to go into that subject about fusing the flaws.
Okay.
So I think many people have heard the term bilby layer.
Uh-huh.
I had never actually heard of it before I met you.
Uh-huh.
And then you showed me what you showed me, and my mind was blown. And then I went and researched it and realized that everybody is really skeptical of this idea of the bilby layer. Yeah, I mean, at least in what Bilby said, you know, back in
Yeah.
1905 or whatever. But tell us a little bit about, let's not say bilby layer, but let's just talk about fusing flaws, which is a somewhat of a London specialty.
All right. Um, Up until I was 19, I would watch Mr. Woodcock, who was teaching me, and he would be polishing rubies mainly. And whenever he polished a ruby, the surface was clean. There were no open flaws. And during the day, other lapidaries, Albert, other lapidaries would come up to him and say, I'm having trouble with this stone, this flaw. Can you help me? And Mr. Woodcock used to look at it and he'd put it in the meth lamp and he'd turn it round on the wax, you know, and put it in his mouth to cool it off, put it on the wheel and go zip, zip, zip. There you go, you know.
So so he was readjusting it on the dop. He was readjusting it in
Yeah,
the wax. Okay.
that's
Okay.
fine. So I was watching this going on. Everybody there said, that's Mr. Woodcock's knack. Well, I didn't see it as a knack. I saw it as a science. So I went down to the Gem and I spoke to Mr. Anderson and Mr. Farm. And
Mhm.
they told me that he was using the bilby layer, you
Okay.
know. So I obviously went home and experimented as the wood wheel that we looked at there. That just literally, it's the surface melts for a fraction of a second while you're working on it. And if you know what you're doing, so you've got flaws in the right direction, the surface just fills up the gaps. Well, we've got thousands of examples of it,
Hmm.
you know. Um, so at 19, I understood that. And I went on to use it in all these tools here are all based upon the bilby layer, you know. When I was doing black onyx discs, which were polishing them, which were 28 millimeters round, that took a fully qualified lapidary 3/4 of an hour, you know, to polish.
Because it's basically just
But
one flat table, right? It's just one flat.
yeah, yeah, there's one flat table with 28 mil round. So using the knowledge of bilby layer, I started experimenting because I was doing all these onyx discs, which were for watches. And think about it, 1/2 mil thick with a hole in the middle, 28 mil round. You're going to polish it, so you can't stick it up on a stick; they break. So I did it with my fingers, and then I could feel when the temperature of the stone was getting warm. And I found that if you could uh, slow the wheel down with your hand and put it to a squeak, right, lift it off, it glazed. It just glazed over.
Yeah.
So eventually I got these down to 1 a minute.
So from
Not
45,
from
so from
And
45
there's
minutes
no way,
to one.
yeah, there's no way that's a grinding process. There's
Yeah.
no way. Yeah. So, you know.
But then but the end of that story though is that the boss didn't like it actually, right?
No, George Diamond used to do it with ruby powder on emeralds. So
Okay.
he used to
So so you can so for fusing the flaws, can you do it on any stone, or is it only on hard stones, or Is there
It's
rules?
on any it's on any stone. The only ones that I really have problem with are Tanzanites.
Okay.
You get a flaw in the Tanzanite, and it's inclined to run. It just runs cracks, so you have to cut them out.
Okay.
Actually, why I learned to saw. All right, it's why Jack Harris taught me to saw, because we had all this rough. We had the first 2,000 stones that were ever found in Tanzanite. And how do you put it? Yeah, and we were asked to cut them. You try cutting them, and every other stone you keep the flaw in. You know, you
Yeah.
fuse it up, you close it up if you like, when you're polishing. But you keep the flaw in a sapphire or a ruby. You can't afford to cut them out, or an emerald. You know, you can't afford
Yeah.
to cut them out. So that's what we did on Tanzanite. And on one occasion, Tom Mowbray was an apprentice there, and I polished this 6 carat Tanzanite, which was lovely. Had a little flaw in the side of it, and Tom said, because we use water for polishing, and Tom said, "Can I see it?" And I put it into the other hand, and the temperature change between warm and cold just ran this flaw straight across the stone. And I got two D shapes. So I learnt that you can't leave flaws in Tanzanite. So
Okay.
saw them out. There we go.
Yeah. But for rubies and emeralds where there often is some surface reaching flaws.
Yeah,
And I know you've sent me hundreds of photos because I'm obsessed with this idea, but we don't have any, unfortunately, we don't have any good ones to show, but uh, I know that it's true, and we're gonna
oh yeah,
present this later. But yeah, to me, it's incredible. I mean, to take a stone that has a surface reaching inclusion on the table and repolish it, and then it doesn't have a surface reaching inclusion on the table,
that's
just
right.
from the polishing technique.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right.
So
That's,
your original experiments were on the wood wheel, right? That wooden one that you were showing us before, something like
uh,
that. But now you're
uh,
doing it on any type of pewter, copper,
yeah.
anything.
The most successful on difficult floors. You get a floor which doesn't just shut in one direction. All right, the
Yeah,
floor inside curves, so there
yeah.
are two different directions, etc. Difficult to find, but the most success I've had with difficult floors is on the pewter wheel here,
Okay,
and that's better than the copper
okay,
doing that.
yeah. So
But,
yeah, I know. After I visited you, I had a custom lap made of that exact blend of pewter.
good.
I haven't
You
really
enjoy?
got I haven't really got into it yet. I've used it once. I want to try it on some emeralds, but right now it's still got a
Yeah.
flat surface, so I don't know if should I keep it just for my tables or should I start faceting on it?
I had that one over there for doing, you know,
Yeah,
you've seen me use that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
But so yeah,
At
I'll just mention that we have a plan right now for once
uh,
COVID is over that we're going to do this research project together, and we're going to
yeah,
really document this bilby layer
uh,
thing that you're doing and try and teach it to other people. I mean, I know you've taught it to all your crew, but
yeah,
I really want to figure out how to do exactly what you're doing on a Western machine or whatever, on an American machine.
of course.
I haven't figured that one out. I've tried it, but I need to.
All it is being taught. All right,
Mhm.
to try and understand it doesn't work, but once you're shown something, oh, it works.
Yeah.
We had a young lady that without mentioning names here. I had a very funny video of her polishing a cabochon and fusing floors up on the cabochon, and I shouted out to her, "Hey, you grinding that floor out?" And she laughed her head off, because she was fusing it. She
Yeah.
knows. So yeah, there's lots of people who you know understand it's there. Ryan, for example, is up in Birmingham.
Yeah.
He's at the university. He's becoming a gemologist, and he knows because he's used it himself. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
That's going to be.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm dying to come back because yeah, I want to do my mini Bilby layer
Yeah.
boot camp. or
I'm
something.
looking forward to it very much. I really am. I'm looking forward to it. There are other things as well, like Albert, as I said, was the scientist. And he explained to me what the angles of facets do and things like that. But he also taught me about optics. And you can have flaws in the center of the stone. And if you put a tallow top table on, they just disappear into the
Mm-hmm.
sides of the stone,
Yeah.
But when you look at the sides, of course, they're not there.
Yeah.
And so make flaws disappear. And we've done a lot of that. We had a lot of fun with it.
So it's kind of like an optical illusion. Like instead of making the table
Yeah,
flat, you make it sort of curved, and then the light's coming in at some strange directions. That's
that's it.
basically it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's
that was
interesting.
always done since Victorian times.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
aware of that.
Ever since you told me the phrase tallow top, I've been looking for it and I've been finding it. I just never, it never caught my eye before. But now that I know that that's something that people do, I'm seeing it more and more. Of course, in old stones. No, I don't think anyone
Yeah.
else is doing that now.
Can I just show you something?
Yeah.
I won't get. You remember you said to me it was like a block of tallow, a
Yeah.
drop of tallow.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a bar of it.
that's the tallow. Okay.
That's tallow.
So do you think, just to continue on with this idea of tallow top, do
Yeah.
you think that what we now call a sugar loaf is a tallow top?
No. Um,
Different thing.
it's peculiar. The name sugarloaf seems to have changed. If you look at the shape of a sugarloaf, it's not like how would you put it? What I would call a French cut cabochon.
Yeah.
You know, it's down. A sugarloaf is straight sides up and a curved top.
Yeah.
That's how sugarloaves were originally said, but now they're using the name sugarloaf for French cut cabochons,
Okay.
and I love them to bits.
But what I wonder is just the name. Where does it come from? I mean, what is a sugar loaf? It must be some kind of food.
Yeah,
Like
it is. There's a sugar loaf. There's actually a sugar loaf. It's like cake,
this is a
but it has the shape, and the stones that were cut like that. They used to use it for labradorite
yeah.
because the sides of the stones could be up straight and the top curved, and you get the full display of color. Whereas
Okay.
if you cut it cabochon, not as a sugar loaf, all the color's gone. Maybe you can do it as an oval and get an eye across the top, but
Yeah.
you know,
So going back to the bilby layer again,
Mhm.
Rod Knowles asked, how critical is lap speed when fusing the flaws?
Okay. How critical is lap speed? Bearing in mind, I don't know the lap speed. It's the whole process is to drag after the table is nice and flat and the depth is disappearing. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
You slow the wheel up. I slow it up by hand to it almost stops, and then you will hear a squeak.
Yeah.
Paddlery probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You hear a
I
squeak.
heard the squeak.
Yeah, that squeak. That's when the bilby layer runs. So that's what's critical about it.
Yeah. So what I've been
Uh,
wondering after I saw you do that, well, yeah, I mean, I did it too. You helped me do it on that one piece of quartz, but I'm wondering
that's fine.
the way that you guys grab the spindle like that. Of course, on our machines, we don't have a spindle. And
No,
I'm and I'm wondering, how like when you're learning how to drive a manual car and it's all about timing, changing gears. I wonder like how important is the way you grab it, how fast it slows down. Because if I just turn my speed control down, I don't think it's going to do the same thing as you grabbing it with the cloth like that.
don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, no,
You
we're going to have
know.
to do some experiments.
Yeah, please. That's where you step into the breach because
Yeah,
then both sides.
yeah.
You know,
So we'll
you,
find
you
out
can
next
play.
year. 2021, we're going to launch the bilby
Yeah,
layer
yeah.
demonstration.
Good fun.
Yeah.
That's good fun. Enjoy that.
Well, one thing we started to talk about this, but then we didn't really say anything. But I wanted to speak a little bit about your team and how you built the team up from just yourself. Because originally, when you started Salamander Gems, it was just you, right?
Not quite.
Okay.
Um, when we started Salamander Gems, it was originally a bead shop, and there's Tish and Chris were there. We met, and then we turned it into Salamander Gems as a jewelers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris, it was a quite funny story actually. Some years ago, I bought some rough ruby, about £16,000 worth. So it wasn't, you know. And there was one piece that I kept thinking that's a rotten colour and throwing it to one side. So Chris came over and wanted to learn, and he was cutting it, and I suddenly saw this flash of gold, you know, and it was a 2-carat golden sapphire. It wasn't a ruby at all. It's been sitting there for years. It's quite amusing, but it's, you know, it's £2,000 or £3,000 stone, so you know, it was good fun. But yes, no, Kevin has been working with me for best part of 40 years. So he's done all aspects of lapidary work. He does the watches, clocks, faceting, cabochons. He understands it all, you know. But as I said, he's been doing it for 40 years.
So how, you know, now that you're on the other side of the spectrum, before you were the apprentice around all of the 60-year-olds, now you're the 70-year-old with all the apprentices. How have you modeled your teaching technique off the way that they taught you, or do you have a totally different approach to teaching gem cutting?
I'm not worried about a competitor.
Okay.
So I teach them to cut and polish their stone.
Okay.
If they take the knowledge that all those lapidaries were so incensed to depart on me. I mean, it was every minute of every day I was being taught, you know. If I can pass that on, I'm happy to do so. I want to do so, you know. I feel it's bad that the business which was set up to teach people, you know, it just dies out.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
You know? So the purpose of taking that knowledge and spreading it around, I mean, that's good. It's not bad.
Yeah. And what about when someone drops the stone?
Well, we don't hit them with a 3-legged stool anymore. You know, those days are gone.
Yeah. When I visited you guys, everybody seemed to be in pretty good spirits. So I assumed that you were a nice boss.
I try. I do try. I remember what it was like the other way around.
Yeah.
That was. I'm not making too points of it, but between 14 and 19 years of age, I went home crying every night.
So
I cried home, went home, and I was asked by the secretary there why I put up with it, and I said it was Jean. She said, Ken, why do you put up with it? And I said, Jean, I want to learn to cut stones, and this is the best place to do it.
Yeah.
So I hung it out.
Yeah.
But you know.
So yeah. So I guess it's not all fun.
It wasn't all fun then, but that's learning, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You know. It's,
But the 3-legged chair didn't really help.
no, it hurt.
Yeah.
It was a solid wooden stool with the bit you sit on was 1.5 inches thick, and the back leg was much longer than the 2 front ones, so that you were tipped at an angle over your wheel. You weren't sitting there like that, you know, which was fine, but the legs used to come through the top, and there was no cushion. So when I first started there, I wrecked about 6 pairs of glasses, 6 pairs of trousers in about 6 weeks. You know? Just used to tear the trousers a bit.
Yeah.
Learned to wear. Anyway.
So now you've got a whole team of people around you. I mean, what do you think? Where's it going to go? Well, somebody had put in the chat, are you thinking of retiring soon? But how do you see the company moving forward?
Right. Well, first place, This is a saying with lapidaries. Lapidaries die with their boots on, they don't retire. I've only known one lapidary to retire, and he was dead within a year,
Mm,
as is the average age of death in SOs,
mm,
1 year after retirement. No,
okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
I like cutting stuff. I'm not going to retire. Where do I see it going? We make a lot of jewellery, and we've been making some quite stunning pieces of jewellery up. One's a friend of mine. Well, I say friend, is a customer. So we get on very well with them, and we just made a Marquise diamond ring. It took me 5 months to find the stone.
Mm,
It was carat 89 F color VS stone. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful stone. But I had to try India and New York, Antwerp, London, you know. But it took 5 months to find that stone because it had to match another ring, which were princess cuts, diamonds, but they were of the same quality, so it had to match.
mm. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's where it's going into making jewellery. So we're cutting stones, making jewellery up, retailing them. We do a lot of auctions, um, buying and selling. Uh, excuse me a second. I can't read that. I'm being flagged about something or other. Repairs. Oh, thank you, dear. Yeah, we do lots of repairs for the public. Yeah, we repair jewellery. You know, we repair stones. We repolish people's stones for them when they come in. So that can be fun.
Yeah.
You know, someone's badly cut stone. They sit here while we do it, and it's just mind blowing. So.
So do you guys do both? Do you take orders from people with their stones and also buy stones and cut them and sell them?
Yeah.
Or you just do a surface?
No, we don't just do a service.
Okay. So a
Uh,
little bit of everything.
yes, it's not easy to um, sell stones into the market because they all have their own avenues where they buy stones from, etc., etc. It's very much a sort of sewn up market,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But we buy stones, we cut them up, and yes, when we have inquiries from the trade, we fulfil them.
Mm.
Otherwise, we make up jewellery, which gets sold on the website,
Mm-hmm.
so forth.
So here's a question that I like a lot. This is kind of, along the same lines of where is it going, but how do you look back, kind of on do you think about how your legacy will be in terms of, you've now trained all these gem cutters and you've made some positive contribution into the world of gem cutting and especially the world of British gem cutting. Do you think about this kind of thing, or are you just completely consumed with your day-to-day cutting work?
It's not something that's really um, in my mind.
Mm,
You know, it's not so much consumed, but day-to-day cutting takes a lot out of me.
mm-hmm,
You know, I get tired. But from the work point of view, manufacturing rings, making stones up, cutting stones from rough. We just did a pair of kite-shaped emeralds, which we're making into a platinum ring for a customer. Yeah, I enjoy life. It's good.
yeah,
Used to enjoy my traveling. That I actually took a break out of the trade for I don't know how many years now. For a while, and I went traveling. I was invited to Sierra Leone to buy diamonds. Did some work for Consolidated Mines buying in Conakry. So yeah, It's been good fun.
Yeah. So that's cool. You got aside from just being in the studio this whole time, had some adventures with gemstones.
Yeah.
What do you think? If you can look back at your whole career so far, has there been a pinnacle moment or a highlight, or what do you think? What's been the moment that's been the most satisfying?
I can't think of one. The whole thing has been.
Yeah.
It's just been a dream.
Yeah.
I've thoroughly enjoyed um, stones, making jewelry, traveling, buying rough, doing everything. I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's been a wonderful life.
I mean, I guess if we take it all the way back to the beginning of your story, you said that you had always wanted to become a gem cutter even when you were a kid. So actually, I guess it really was a literal dream from childhood.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So,
I get-
and I've been lucky enough to be able to do it.
yeah.
Everything fell into place.
So yeah, I guess that can be an inspiration for all of us, whether we're gem cutters or not. Just do the thing that you want to do, and hopefully, when we get to your point, we're feeling very satisfied with what we've been doing with our time.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it. I love ending on an inspirational note. There's a couple more questions in the question, but I think we pretty much said everything we meant to say. So let me put up a final screen here. So if people want to find you, or if they want to buy something from you, or maybe they just want to come say hi,
Yeah.
um,
Or
all
perhaps
of
they want to
those
come.
things. So Ken's on Instagram. He's not posting too much on there, but he's got some stones. He's on Facebook occasionally, popping up some things, and you can find them on the web. Salamandergems.co.uk is their main site, so you'll see stones, some info. I don't know, all kinds of stuff's on there. Background information about Ken. Um, I don't know what else. If they want to come visit, how should they
That's
get a
right.
hold of you?
They just phone.
Yeah, I guess all the contact info is on the Salamander Gyms website. That's how I found you. So, um,
Yeah, that's right.
okay. So yeah, if people want to come by and say hi, or commission you or whatever,
Yeah,
or I know you guys are people can come by, and if they want to do like a day long lesson, you'll do that as well, right?
yeah. As I said, we recently did a month-long lesson.
Oh yeah. So I guess if you're looking for something to do during COVID, uh,
Yeah,
if I was in England, I would have been there the whole time. I would have been like living above the studio or something, or in the basement, camped out front with a mask on. But I have to wait. Okay, well, Ken, thank you so much. I'm super happy. I've been wanting to get you on an interview here for months now, and I'm happy that we finally found a moment to do it. And
yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Justin. It's been great fun.
And thanks to all the guests for all the great questions. And definitely go look up Ken on the various social medias and whatever. Say hi, and definitely check out. There's a lot of great info coming out. I mentioned a few times in this talk that I've been working on this article of the history of cutting in London, and
Uh,
Ken and other people like Ken have been really, really helpful for that. So keep an eye out. It's going to be coming out in the GMA magazine sooner or later. It's not finished because it's just a ton of information, 500 years or so, but it's looking great. It's almost there. And also, uh, Ken and I did a video in one of the World of Faceting Machine videos. So one thing that I wanted to talk about, what we didn't get to, is how you hack the lap and how you chop up the lap. Anyway, there's a video about it. So if you guys want to see the wild way that they score their polishing laps with bricks, check that out on YouTube. Just type in, I think it's polishing lap prepping UK or something. You'll find it in the World of Faceting Machines. But so you can see a little bit more of Ken's technique and a little bit behind the scenes in the studio. Okay, well, thanks again, Ken, and see everybody else next month. as you can see, the next episode's November 8th, which just ends up being my birthday. So I guess next month will be my,
Happy birthday from
yeah,
them.
it'll be my birthday episode. I don't know who's the guest going to be yet. I'm still asking a couple different people, but it will be good. We'll be talking with more master cutters and great cutters and everybody. So
Yeah,
yeah,
look
Ken, you
forward
can
to it.
you can join us too next time as a guest if you want to, see
Yeah,
what
I'd
other
love to.
people are doing. So okay, well, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you so much,
Yep.
and you have a good evening out there, and to
Thank you,
everybody else as
Justin.
well.
It's been great fun.
Thank you so
And
much.
happy birthday from them.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I still have a month to go, but I will have one then. So
Yeah, all right.
okay,
Okay.
thanks. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.